So, today we're going to do things just a little bit different. Oh shoot, I forgot to change all the stuff for the stream. Hold on. Oh dear. Oh no. I forgot. I streamed Hearthstone earlier this morning, so that's still going. Um, let's see. Expound Podcast. Yeah, I didn't go to work this morning because I just didn't feel up to it. So I played some Hearthstone, and well, literally nobody showed up, not even my bot. Let's see. Oh, it's called Just Chatting. Not, anyways. There we go. Now the stream is Just Chatting, and it's just us. It's just me, myself, and I. Instead of starting with a song, I wanted to do an excerpt from one of my favorite plays, Shakespeare, obviously. I do like Romeo and Juliet a lot, but there is one that I do like more. It has a pretty simple story, but to be or not to be, that is the question. Whether 'tis nobler in the mind to suffer the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune, or to take arms against a sea of troubles, and by opposing end them, to die, to sleep, no more, and by a sleep to say we end the heartache and the thousand natural shocks that flesh is heir to, 'tis a consummation devoutly to be wished. To die, to sleep, perchance to dream. Aye, there's the rub. For in that sleep of death, what dreams may come, when we have shuffled off this mortal coil, must give us pause. There's the respect that makes calamity of so long life. For who would bear the whips and scorns of time that presses wrong, and the proud man's contumely, the pangs of despised love, the law's delay, the insolence of office, and the spurns the patient merit of the unworthy takes, when he himself might his quietus make with a bare bodkin? Who would fares bear to grunt and sweat under a weary life? But that the dread of something after death, the undiscovered country of those whose bourne no traveller returns, puzzles the will and makes us rather bear those ills we have than fly to others that we know not of. Thus consciousness does make cowards of us all, and thus the native hue of resolution is sickled o'er with the pale cast of thought, and enterprises of great pith and moment with this regard their currents turn awry, and lose the name of action. Soft you now, the fair Ophelia, nymph in thy orisons, be all my sins remembered. I like Hamlet, which this is an excerpt from. I like Hamlet for the simplicity of the story. I feel like a lot of people think that Romeo and Juliet is simple because it's so well known, people understand it. but there's a whole lot of stuff that happens in Romeo and Juliet. It starts with the scene at the very beginning where it's these two families, basically members of the different houses, just on the street, you know, hating each other and trying to, get at each other, anger them, but trying to maintain that they're on the side of the law, basically. Like there's this back and forth of like, should I go up to him? And I think there's, and I'm not gonna quote this, spot on, but it's like he bites his thumb at him when which is sort of like a bad thing to do. It's sort of like our version of flipping someone the finger, or putting your hand against your chin and then flipping it up in a way, which is to symbolize calling someone a bitch, basically. So when you bite your thumb at someone, it's basically an insult and whatnot. And the one person says, "Do you bite your thumb at me?" And he says, "I do bite my thumb." Actually, no. He steps back and asks his friend, "If I say yes, is the law on my side?" And then he goes back and says, "I do bite my thumb, but I do not bite my thumb at you, sir." They're like trying to edge each other on, like, you make a move, no, you make a move, basically, so they can technically be in the right, but they're messing with each other. And if you look at a lot of history and even politics, there's a lot of that where they're antagonizing people so that they can make them try and do something, even though it is technically in response to something. They're trying to prove that the other person made the first move, and then they're allowed to do whatever they want in retaliation, basically. But yeah, that's a great scene that I think gets overlooked a whole lot because the rest of Romeo and Juliet goes on. Actually, there's a great scene following that where Romeo is talking with Mercutio, and I think like some other people are there too. But Mercutio is sort of like trying to get Romeo to consider, going out and enjoying life and actually, I don't know, like pursuing love. And they were, there's a whole lot of metaphors referring to love, and it's like a terrible sting, and Mercutio says it's like a dream, it can be whatever you want it to be. But the basically it's a great scene because it gets you get to see a glimpse of I like how I was going to talk about Hamlet and now I'm talking about Romeo and Juliet. It is a side tangent, but I promise it won't be too long. People think that Romeo was just sort of a normal person that happened upon this, but it was actually, he wasn't interested in really anything, and was a bit of, I don't want to say rebellion. Anyways, the point is that Mercutio is the one that sort of gets him to go to this ball, basically, and that's when they meet Romeo and Juliet, and then they find out later, or actually no, I believe it. I think people mistake it that they meet each other, they fall in love, and then they find out that they're um, from the opposite families. But I believe they actually did recognize each other. Um, it's one of those things where they probably heard of the other by name, possibly, but they didn't recognize their face, and so it was a sort of love at first sight thing that they knew, you know, from the get-go that it wasn't gonna work. And then, after the party, he goes out into the garden, and then he calls up to her, and there's that whole great scene, a lot of metaphors of how beautiful she looks. And maybe I'll read some of that next session, rather than doing some reading, because that's also some really good stuff. And and they spend the night, and then Tybalt, Juliet's cousin, finds out and then goes to fight Romeo. Mercutio steps in. Mercutio dies. And that's also a really, really great scene that, again, people don't know about. But, Mercutio is one of my favorite characters because he starts out with, like, trying to support Romeo as his best friend, getting him to feel better. And there's a whole lot of behind-the-scenes stuff that you don't see. And you don't even necessarily specifically read about Mercutio, but you can sort of learn from context clues and whatnot. And then as Mercutio is dying, to the very end, he's trying to be positive and say, "'Tis but a scratch. It's just a scratch." And then, there's a whole lot more back and forth. And then his final line in the play as he dies, he says, "A plague on both your houses. A plague on both your houses." Because he wasn't part of either of their houses. And he himself was sick over what the conflict between the two houses was doing to not just the other house, but to the houses themselves and all the people caught in between. And Mercutio is a perfect example of that, of this very, stupid thing that these two families are bickering about. And they don't even know why they're fighting, but they just are, Anyways. Excuse me. I cut my hair right before this, so I probably have a whole lot of stuff in my system. I'm very susceptible to fine dust and animal hairs, I know, and apparently human hairs as well. I apologize. But yeah, then Romeo has to run away, basically, because he committed murder on Tybalt in an act of revenge on Mercutio. But nobody, says that, it's just that Romeo killed Tybalt. And I think it's like years later that Juliet's going to be married, and Romeo makes his entrance back in, but she kills herself with poison. Or no, she was supposed to meet with the Reverend there because he wanted to help her, but she had poison just in case because she didn't want to be married. And then Romeo arrives. I'm pretty sure that it's Juliet that had. I'm probably getting these wrong. I believe it's Juliet that had the poison. Romeo drinks it because he already thinks that she's dead. And then she wakes up just as he's dying of the poison. And she, I know that she has the quote, "And you left me not a drop to drink to follow after," or something like that. But then she takes his dagger and plunges it into herself and dies. Um, you know, so there's a whole lot of like extra stuff and scenes and exposition that I think a lot of people gloss over that, isn't necessarily, I don't want to say important, but I think definitely helps tie in a whole lot of stuff. And I know that can be said for, just about anything, but my point being is that, the scenes with Mercutio, I think most people don't even know exist, which is just sad to me. Um, yeah. Hamlet, and I won't go too deep into this, is not Victorian setting. I believe is actually just straight up fantasy. I believe it's, again, I failed at geography. I believe it's somewhere like the Netherlands or something, or somewhere where like kings and dukes and whatnot are still, a normal natural thing. Um, but anywho, goodness, I might not be able to talk. Um, the story is that Hamlet is the son of a rightful king. The king was betrayed by his brother, the Duke or something, and basically the Duke takes power. It's sort of like a Emperor Palpatine sort of situation where he's like playing everyone. Nobody really knows that he's actually pulling all the strings because he's trying to act nice and but Hamlet basically becomes a fugitive, um, and there's like this whole cool scene and stuff where Hamlet is talking to his father's ghost, and whatnot, and that's how he learns that the Duke is his own brother is who killed the king, and so Hamlet seeks revenge on his uncle. And there's a whole lot of other stuff, um, and it's a whole lot of like intertwining stuff of like playing the family against each other, but it sort of ends with Hamlet has to fight his cousin, I believe, and his cousin is tricked into fighting Hamlet for their uncle because his sister died. I believe it was an accident, but she fell into the river and drowned. And there's a great scene where he's crying and he's like, these tears that I dust weep for you or something. It I don't remember the exact quote, but he basically said something along the lines of, I can't cry. There's been too much water already. We've been drowning it. Or what? He's been talking about like the entire situation with this family and how it's falling apart and tearing itself from the inside out, trying to figure out who is the killer. Um, and so he chokes it back and resorts to, not just finding the killer of his uncle, the king, but actually going after Mercutio, or not Mercutio, goodness gracious, Hamlet, because they think that Hamlet is the killer for some reason. I don't remember. Um, man, my favorite play, and I don't remember a whole lot. It's been a while. Basically, uh, Hamlet and his cousin. I don't remember his name. It's like a really good name too. I think I might not be able to pronounce it, and that's why I can't remember it. Hamlet versus Laertes. That's why. Yeah, that's just like a weird name. Claudius, I believe, is the name of the uncle. But basically the final scene and whatnot is the family is having like this. I want to say it's like a social event somehow. Like it's not a ball because basically the main event is Laertes and Hamlet showing up to duel, you know. But I do remember that basically everybody's watching. Um, I think like a time and place has been called, and they arrived. I don't remember specifically Hamlet's motivation for fighting. Oh, I think I remember now. I think it was sort of like for funsies that they were going to have duels and whatnot. I oh my goodness. There was like a whole lot of like, we're gonna say it's one thing, but you have to like read between the lines and realize that, there's a whole lot of dark stuff going on in the background. So there's a whole lot of lying and a whole lot of like um, basically plots and evil plans behind the scenes with everything. So it's a little convoluted, and that's why it's kind of psychological. With the scene about what's it mean to die and whatnot. To sleep, perchance to dream, to be or not to be. Um, but I remember that the uncle, frick, I forgot his name already. But he gave Laertes an enchanted weapon. I don't remember what he called it. It was probably a cursed weapon, but I'm probably just thinking of D&D. Basically, whenever the blade nicks the flesh, as long as it like produces blood, it will be a fatal wound. Basically, I don't remember if it's a poison or if it just like curses the person to die. And so he gave it to Laertes, like, this is how you win. This is how you kill Hamlet, who is the only person who knows the truth, other than the evil Duke, basically. Um, but in the middle of the fight, and they also poisoned the winning goblet in case Hamlet does win. They poisoned the goblet that he would drink out of, the winner, whatever. And in the middle of the fight, Hamlet's mother comes out and raises the glass as a toast to him. Like, I know that you're already going to win, so I'm going to drink from the glass first to support you. Because I guess the family drinks from the goblet or something. I don't remember. But then the Duke was like, no, you mustn't. And then she drinks it and she gets poisoned. And she basically dies right in the middle of the fight. Or at least she like passes out or something. And then they have to finish the fight quickly. But in the fight, Hamlet drops his weapon. And Laertes comes after him. Or I don't remember whose weapon gets dropped first, but I do know that they trade weapons, basically. And Hamlet does do the killing blow on Laertes with the cursed weapon, basically. Like that was the play. And basically the whole point of the story is that it doesn't matter how stacked the odds are against you. It doesn't matter, what advantages you have. They can still be turned against you and whatnot. And your own evil will be your own doing. Yeah. Like there's so much more that I'm just missing because I'm like trying to simplify it. My goodness. I need a minute. I'm sorry. Goodness. I'm just getting like super stuffed up. Uh. And I keep trying to like drink water and blow my nose, but sometimes I have to cough, and I'm like trying to do it away from the mic. I'm like continually drinking water, but man, I like was just trying to do it and I couldn't, and then I had to do it. It's so stupid. So this is going to be an issue apparently. And it wasn't even a problem when I was like getting ready to stream, which is like even more annoying. um the reason why I'm talking about Hamlet and all this other stuff is because I got a request to discuss history, lore, basically. And that's probably Virgo, who is currently streaming at the moment, who I did want to get on the podcast. But she started gaming earlier than normal because it is ranked night in PUBG that she's playing. So they're trying to get some W's, or whatever they call it. I think they call it W's, which, you know, is just gamer slang for win. But they don't just say W, you know, because W is like longer than saying win. You know, you can't just say, let's get this win. You know, we have to say, let's get this dub, which is short for W, which is about the same length as win. And I'm just, I just don't get it. Yeah. Anywho, going back to literature, lore, and whatnot. Yeah, I just sort of wanted to basically discuss some of the bits of intrigue that I've been a part of. You know, and I feel like this would be more interesting if I was actually talking to somebody. You know, if I actually had, you know, someone viewing the stream that I could interact with, and maybe even someone on the podcast. So, but this is me just sort of doing this, I suppose. I will say that there are other things that might be more interesting than me just sort of talking about Shakespeare, though. You know, there's a whole lot of lore that I know from other media, such as video games, you know, anime, maybe, I guess, I don't know. That would be fun to talk about. But, you know, stuff like Dark Souls and Bloodborne, I could definitely go real heavy in that lore and do some stuff. I'd love to do some Vadi Vidya, you know, just sort of talking stuff. I actually do have I literally Googled Vadi Vidya script, and really the only thing I could get access to is one of the things that he did for Bloodborne. So that might be fun to read, and I could do that real quick. All I have is the first page. I could get a free account to read the rest of it, but I don't necessarily want to just plagiarize that, and you know, I wouldn't want to read his words word for word anyways. But Vadi Vidya does do some great stuff, so I could just read that real quick. For those of you who don't know what Bloodborne is, it's basically Victorian style, you know, vampire hunter, monster hunter, you know. The world is in constant nighttime throughout the entire game. and there's a whole lot of lore to um, how you are. It's this forever nighttime, because that's when the monsters come out, and the only way to fix it is by killing the monsters and whatnot, and bringing about the daytime, because there's all these horrors that are basically leading or controlling, not necessarily time and space or whatever, um, but there's a whole lot of like deep lore in the hunter's dream and how you are personally connected to it. And there's actually a lot of stuff about that, of like how you get like a good ending to the game, because there's lots of different endings to it. And some of it is that you have to uh, confront the basic abomination that's in the moon and whatnot, and you can choose how to interact with that. Um, you could just do the very basic stuff and then have the old hunter send you back to the waking world. Basically leave this night, this dream, and go back to being a normal person. Or you could take his place and let him, wake up as you begin to take the mantle of controlling the dream, in order to help protect the rest of the world. Or you could actually go after the moon presence itself, but that in and of itself is also something that doesn't lead to necessarily the end of everything as well. It's really convoluted, and again, I could go into so much stuff on it, but the basic gist is that um, it's gone to nighttime. The monsters and creatures have started to come out, and you have to basically slay all of them. But they will be constantly coming back up unless you get to certain points and areas where they're trying to do rituals and summon things, or there are major creatures that are out there haunting certain towns and whatnot that you have to dispose of. And you'll run into a lot of different stuff. There are certain areas where, in order to progress, so to speak, you do have to go to these side places and get like an item or something. So it's like not necessarily that you have to kill that specific boss for the story, but for the gameplay, you kind of have to progress through there or whatnot. But then there's a whole bunch of other stuff with the side story and whatnot. But yeah, let me go ahead and read that sort of first page excerpt from Vadi Vidya's, who, by the way, I highly recommend. He has a very nice voice as well, and he makes the lore, easy to follow along with, pretty simple. He does a whole lot of work and research, and actually, when I say research, I don't just mean that he goes through like all the item descriptions or like plays the game multiple times. I mean, he actually goes into the original game files, and I don't just mean, the ones in English. I mean in Japanese, the original ones, and how they translate, and sort of figuring out the lore that way because of how it translates and whatnot. And how the mythology is sort of different between us here in America and where it's made over in Japan, and like all this other different stuff. Like Sekiro is like very, very different. But and he's also getting like other people to help him, or looking for others that have also made discoveries and whatnot, either by accident or intentionally trying to dig through the game, and whatnot. So yeah, I will go ahead and read this brief excerpt. But again, highly recommend check out his stuff. The oldest and strongest emotion of mankind is fear, and the oldest and strongest kind of fear is fear of the unknown. H.P. Lovecraft. Our eyes are yet to open. Fear the old blood. These were the words spoken between Master William and Lawrence, from the cautious teacher to the ambitious student. Fear what you do not understand. Fear the old blood. And so our story begins, as you might have guessed, with blood, ancient blood. Deep below the city of Yharnam lies the ancient underground labyrinth of Thumeru, You know it as the Chalice Dungeons, the Pthumeru Chalice Dungeons. The old labyrinth was carved out by the Pthumerians, superhuman beings that are said to have discovered a sinister truth. The hunters had another name for the labyrinth. They called it the Tomb of the Gods, for below they found traces of godlike beings named the Great Ones. The Great Ones could function on transcendental planes of thought, meaning they had elevated their consciousness beyond the physical realm. The benefits of operating on this plane are unclear. Perhaps it was in the name of immortality, or perhaps power, as even beyond, the Great Ones could interfere with beings and events in the waking world. Whatever the case, it is clear that some sort of ascension took place, as there are numerous references to some Great Ones being left behind. Of all the strange life forms that reside in the nooks and crannies of the old labyrinth, the slugs are clear signs of the left behind Great Ones. One such Great One appears to be abandoned Ebrietas, a left behind being who apparently did not ascend with her brethren. One day, Ebrietas would be discovered by the humans above, in a crusade that begins with a character named Willem. Master Willem presided over a prestigious place of learning, Bergenworth. Situated by a tranquil lake and secluded within a gigantic forest, Bergenworth housed the minds that would change the world. In fact, everything sacred in Yharnam came to be traced back to Bergenworth, including the most influential characters within our story. And that's all I can read for right now. But that does touch on a few things. It's great that the first quote is by H.P. Lovecraft, because there is a lot of Lovecraftian elements in Bloodborne. It's not just taking a stake and going out and fighting vampires with holy water and whatnot. There are lycanthropes and whatnot. A lot of people think of it as sort of like a Victorian style Dark Souls or Demon Souls, but really it's a lot different. In fact, I would consider it more of like a Castlevania style of theme. It's definitely not medieval, but it has that sort of monster hunting essence to it, in this very dark, secluded, unforgiving world that has just been completely misshapen and torn asunder by nightmares and other nightmare fuel, basically. And so thinking back to Lovecraftian, you think of all those like eldritch abominations and whatnot, and those are a significant part of the story that aren't necessarily seen like in the first page. There's a whole lot of talk about blood and how it's affected people and misshapen. And actually there's a cool mechanic in Bloodborne, which I saw in Bloodborne, that wasn't in Dark Souls. Basically, when you take a hit in Dark Souls, you have a red health bar, but whenever you take a hit, you will see how much of the health bar gets knocked down to, but it doesn't just immediately go there. It stays yellow, and then it like goes down. It goes down pretty quick, but it goes down to that spot. It doesn't just cut off, and I think that's pretty good, because it shows you a measurement of like what a single hit can do, basically, before going down to your current health or whatnot. Or in a lot of video games, it's sort of hard to keep track of what your health is. Specifically, if you're trying to gauge like what an enemy is doing, it's hard to, figure out if they do 25 damage, is that significant? I don't know. So having reference to the health bar and whatnot. But in Bloodborne, while you still have that sort of yellow health bar that's going down to be with the standard red, you can attack the other enemy to make them lose health, and you can regenerate some of that yellow health back to red. It's just a very cool game mechanic that inspires you to be aggressive, and not just, every single time you take damage, run away and then heal and then continue the fight. So there's a whole lot of like strategy and freedom that Bloodborne really offers, in comparison to a lot of games. But basically you see a whole lot of like misshapen people, werewolves, you know some people that are like crazy and whatnot, some people that are turned into like snakes or bugs or other things. You don't really see a whole lot of like tentacle creatures or whatnot. There are like some creatures that I honestly don't want to give away too much, but there basically are like things that you can't see. There are those other larger, you know I honestly want to say like alien, uh, abomination creature things that are sort of driving this force behind the whole nightmare and whatnot. And and when I say nightmare, I don't just mean that like physically they're like scary and whatnot. I literally mean that the world has been trapped in this void, this dream, but they're turning it into a nightmare that they can control and manifesting it into the real world. It's like very cool. And back to the other point that was brought up in that brief intro page that Vadi had, is Willem, which is a very bright-eyed, Willem was very interested in I'm trying to figure out how to sort of say this, like Willem created Bergenworth to sort of study, all the mystery, because I can't even really say it's science, because it's just sort of studying dreams and nightmares and eldritch abominations and aliens and moon presences and sort of like the nightmares and the things that reside within it. So there's a whole lot of like cool stuff there. But Lawrence was this younger man who there's always that one person that when you're studying something, you want to study it from all sides, basically. And some of that comes with experimentation that could be quite dangerous. And Lawrence did investigate the blood, the old blood, and that's why Willem was telling him beware the old blood, which is basically where it all originates. Where what this connection that everyone has with this world is the blood that flows through people. The people of Yarnum are very sick, and the only way that they're like able to survive is by taking this extra dimensional like alien blood that was able to make them better and whatnot. And I almost like made a spoiler for like, yeah, it's kind of like this TV show. um, and I don't even want to say like what it's from. Yeah, I literally can't say anything because I don't want to give it away. But I think some of you kind of know what I was talking about, and it's not even really like that, anyways. Um, but yeah, so the people of Yarnum, very sick, took the blood, and for the most part, they were like able to survive, but they got to be very dark, unhealthy. Sort of like the people of Barovia, basically. But some of them did, start to turn monstrous, especially at night, um, where people just sort of went insane, animalistic, and some of them did turn a bit more feral in the sense that there was some essence of lycanthropy, which is werewolves, if you don't know. But yeah, the whole point is that like this blood, and that's why the game is called Bloodborne, because this whole nightmare scenario is made from this bloodborne. It's not even a disease. It's this state of reality, and you know all this other junk that's happening, or whatever. Anywho, um, but Lawrence went out and actually became the first vicar, which is uh, one of the people that actually, um, you know, became this one of the larger uh, lycanthropes. It was sort of like it was a physical body change, but it wasn't just like turning into a werewolf that you like could maybe cure and like turn back when the night's over or whatever. He actually sort of like transcended his form into this larger being, um, that sort of is like a it's like a werewolf, but it's like a strange, large, elongated, alien-esque werewolf, basically. Very cool, uh, you know, just in sort of design or whatever, because it is a game. But yeah. So Lawrence did sort of go out and learn uh, a lot of stuff about what was going on. Really, the only way to do that was to sort of embrace the nightmare, basically. So he did, eventually lose it, but he did learn so much stuff, which helped us, the main character, progress through the story in the nightmare, in order to, find these other paths to find some end other than just, killing everything, basically. Um, so, there are, like, we can get into the Chalice dungeons, the Pthumero, uh, you know, dungeons underneath the city and everything, and find some stuff in there, uh, to sort of learn and progress, and yeah, like a whole bunch of other cool stuff. We're almost at about an hour, and I feel like I don't want to get like too deep on this, especially because I feel like this might be cooler to discuss as I played Bloodborne or something. Um, and also because, again, I don't want to give too much away without like letting people actually experience it at the same time. But I'd love to play Bloodborne if people would be interested in that. Um, I could get into some other stuff, um, but yeah. Um, I'm trying to think of like I'm glancing over this again real quick. Basically, the first page that I basically teased you all with some lore about Bloodborne. Um, Basically, just sort of just went over the creatures, the grubs and the alien, transcendence and whatnot, as well as the blood stuff, um, and whatnot. But there's a whole lot more to the story and whatnot. And here's a cool thing about you know the the Soulsborne saga, from Demon Souls to Sekiro to Dark Souls and Bloodborne and all that other stuff. The game developers do this really cool thing where they set you on the path to play the game, where you can basically play it however you want, and you can go a certain direction, but there's so many branching paths, and you get a sense of where you should go or can go, but they don't specifically tell you how to go there, and they also don't tell you the the specific lore. But there's so much that you can learn if you are paying attention, if you're reading item descriptions, if you're paying attention to where you are and the people that are there, and what they say when you interact with them, as well as if you fight a boss in a specific place, it seems kind of weird, um, you know, or if you get invaded by this evil entity, and whatnot. Um, you know, you could just be walking down an alley and then like this giant spider creature falls down, and you're like, "That's weird. I guess that's just game design." But no, it's actually because there's some legitimate story behind that. Where this creature came from and who they once were and how they got transformed into that. You can actually figure that stuff out and learn if you're willing to pay attention and actually pursue the story. And you can read into so much stuff, but you don't have to. And that's what's great about the games that they develop. So there's so much stuff that these people that love this game can research and discover, basically by just investigating further, besides just sort of loving the game. The graphics, the feel, the gameplay, the combat, and the items and whatnot. um, it's just a lot of cool stuff that you can sort of learn about. And I'd love to do some Dark Souls stuff too, but I feel, again, it might be more relevant to sort of play the game and describe stuff as we see. Like if I just start talking about the bird nest on the top of the tree of Dark Souls, there's gonna be some people that are like, I have no idea what you're talking about. Why do I care? But the people who have played it are gonna know exactly what I'm talking about and know why it's important. And like what it means and why it's there. um, all this other stuff that I feel like would be easier to understand if I was playing the game, walked right up to it and said, hey, this thing here's a fun little story about it. I feel like that might be more interesting. So I would love to play some Dark Souls or Bloodborne or any of those lovely games, and some other stuff too and whatnot. But I think I am gonna call it at about an hour, just because I do want to, I think, play some games. I'm not sure what I want to play though, but I think I will just sort of call it here. Probably go cough up some more, get some water, use the bathroom and whatnot, Actually, I might even get some food. Who knows? But yeah, basically gonna end it here. But if you sort of liked this discussion, I don't know. Let me know. Do have a Discord, I guess. I don't know. Maybe I might need to put that. I should have that in my about, I believe. Like how I'm discussing this to nobody in the end of the stream. I do see that I do have a second viewer. I'm not sure who it is though, because I can't figure out names or whatever. Oh, Angel Damon 7645 followed me. So, it's probably them. But yeah. Gonna call it here, and I'll be back on streaming in just a little bit, playing something. I'm not sure what. Anyways. Night.